Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan show. Thanks for joining the conversation. In this episode, I break my vacation promise and sit down for a spontaneous chat with our incredible safari field guide at Sabi Sands, South Africa. Geoff Haslam is highly skilled and knowledgeable about all the animals in the reserve. As a qualified level 2 guide, Geoff has undergone rigorous training and accumulated over 1,200 hours of experience leading trails through the African wilderness. This certification not only reflects his deep understanding of animal behavior, ecology, and safety protocols, but also demonstrates his ability to provide guests with an immersive and educational safari experience. We were so grateful to have Geoff as our field guide. Hello, Geoff. Thanks so much for joining me on my podcast today.
No worries. I hope you're doing well.
Other than just being drenched in the rain, in the freezing cold for 2 days, I'm great.
2 days? Nah, can't be that bad. It's only 36 hours.
So I am here in the incredible Sabi Sands with you, and you have been, Oscar and I have been calling you Geoff the Savior for many reasons, but you have been our incredible guide on, while it has been cold and wet, honestly, it has still been just a remarkable journey through nature, through the wilderness, through the wild. We've seen all the animals. No, not all the animals, of course, but the big five, as they say. And so can you tell me a little bit about what inspired you to go into this career and, why you decided to kind of take this path?
So I was one of those kids that hated the idea of being confined. I didn't find any stimulation and mental growth while I was in school. But however, we used to travel and go to the bush once a year. So I found that I enjoyed being outdoors more often than that. And it led me to doing or saying that I wanted to do this. And when it came to basically high school and choosing subjects, it became the option of what I needed to do in order to obtain a career path. And I sat down with my father and he mentioned that, listen, this might not be an option to do your whole life, but as long as you try and have something in your background that gives you the ability to do more, you might be needed elsewhere. So whilst I was in high school, I completed my motor mechanics, my biology, and my mechanical engineering, which gave me the ability of not only doing mechanical engineering, but civil engineering. So in tails, that gives me, I'm not fully qualified engineer just yet, but it does give me the ability to draw up sketches and designs that people do ask with regards to knowing a little bit of those specific areas. So it does give me the ability, like if people ask me whilst I'm at work to design and draw up a garage unit, I can, or like a carport, I'm more than able to, and just be able to reference points for them in order to use that.
Okay, so you clearly are knowledgeable because Oscar and I have been so fortunate to be on the safari with you, and we have seen what they call the Big Five. Can you tell me why they call it the Big Five, and why are they kind of categorized as the priority, where we just go, oh, yeah, that's a zebra, and we keep driving, but then we're like searching for the Big Five? Can you tell us why that is?
So the Big Five were unfortunately the animals that were the most prestigious to hunt. So the term Big Five came from a hunting aspect, in the sense where the animals that were the hardest to hunt on foot given the same advantages. So even though Google at the time being will say that out of the most dangerous animals, hippos kill more humans, hippos stay in the water most of the day, and it's very easy just to take a boat and go kill a hippo. However, that was not the idea of the phrase, the Big Five. It was simply given the same advantages for both sides. that's where the term came from. So hunting them on foot, not in a vehicle, that's where the ethics behind it came from.
Ah, okay. So it's not just like, the big five, like the most popular by vote of the people of Africa saying, we like these animals the best.
No, unfortunately, it's not as simple as that. And the hunting aspect of it basically started with the Dutch and the English invading Africa. And since then, they found these animals to be trophies, and it developed from there.
Yeah, and I would really actually like to dive into that a bit, because it is... To me, I asked you the question when we were on this journey on the safari of like, hey, is climate change a bigger threat or are humans? Because this poaching and the fact that people do want to have these animals as trophies has become so problematic, to where a lot of these animals are endangered. A lot of these animals are being used. For example, the rhinoceros. You mentioned that you here in the reserve remove the horns because it prevents poachers from coming in and then just killing the animal for the horn only. Can you tell me a little bit about the threat that has been, I guess, rampant and ongoing for such a long time?
So by the removal of the horn, it doesn't eliminate the poaching, it just makes it less valuable. So the people still come in and they still remove whatever is left. The saying is that a rhino's horn is like a human's fingernail or hair. In a human's fingernail, we have a root that is embedded underneath the skin. And it's the same concept for the rhino. We cannot remove the complete horn without killing it or without injuring it. So we move it to the growth point, which makes it less valuable. And that seems to be a deterrent at the moment. But when desperate times come, they will unfortunately still be taken out, and that little bit that is there will still be needed. So even though the efforts are there in order to try and protect these animals, human greed and lack of understanding or lack of belief, that is, still dictate that these animals need to be killed for it.
So can you tell me a little bit about, like, I know the other day they had an anti-poaching unit. Like, what is being done in order to prevent this? Because obviously it's been an ongoing problem from the beginning of, people coming to this country. But it's clearly, even though we have the information and the knowledge that we do, that this is wrong and it's not ethical, it seems like people just disregard that. And I had asked you what the penalty was if you caught a poacher, right? And you mentioned it was imprisonment.
So, yeah, currently it's imprisonment, and unfortunately it won't go further than that due to the fact that obviously it will be dictated as inhumane, or, there is no death penalty for it. So as much as a lot of the activists would want death penalties to the poachers, these guys are just potentially doing it because they have struck poverty. So the problem comes in that we cannot get to the root of the cause. And that's where, if you remove the root of the cause, then sure, you're going to save a lot of unnecessary deaths. So by removing the root, that would be the best. But unfortunately, people, and it's a syndicate, people are not willing to say anything. It's a mafia system. People aren't willing to talk without losing their lives. And that's unfortunately what is currently happening, is if people talk, they lose their lives. So as much as we do efforts like anti-poaching or actually almost domesticating these animals, they are still targets at the end of the day, and it's unfortunate that way.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I think that amazed me the most, because, of course, I said, hey, I'm going on safari, and my mom goes, oh my gosh, I hope you don't get eaten or attacked by a lion. I saw a video online where the lion was chasing the Jeep and jumped in, and all of these things that, of course, those are the viral videos that go out, but essentially, for the most part, we did find some pretty close encounters, but for the most part, you almost forget for a brief moment how deadly these creatures are, because they come so close to the vehicles. They're so acclimated. They almost seem like they know you guys, especially the trackers who are hanging out at the front of the vehicle. And it's like, playful. We saw Nene the leopard was almost playful. And so for a minute, you just want to get out and pet the animal. And Oscar constantly reminds me, yeah, that animal will bite your arm off if needed. But can you tell me a little bit about how they are so, quote unquote, domesticated, but still in the wild? Like they are, I don't want to use the word tame because they're still a wild animal, but at the same time, they aren't afraid of you per se, and they are really, easy going really close to the cars and the vehicles.
So I guess the terminology is not tamed and not pet-like, but more habituated. Okay. Bearing in mind, I'll make an example. Arethusa has been a commercial lodge operating since 1998. So you can imagine, for almost 30 years, we have been in the Sabi Sands. We have been the forefront of conservation in terms of trying to give these animals the best potential opportunity of survival. And not only that, trying to show them that we are not a threat at all. So in turn, this does lead to having nice behavior to the point where they're very comfortable with the vehicles to a certain point. Obviously, these are still wild creatures at the end of the day, and one wrong move does end up causing quite a bit of calamity for both animal and guest, as well as guide and tracker. These animals, especially elephants, because of their intelligence, will recognize that. So they will, if you do something mischievous to a herd of elephants and you go antagonize youngsters, those elephants will remember you. And for something that can live for 60 years and remember you for that period of time, you're outclassed every way that you think about. So yes, we've been the forefront of habituation, and we have put in very strict yet understanding rules and regulations in order to allow these animals not only peace, privacy, but also to give us the best chance of seeing these animals whilst keeping their behavior as natural as possible.
Yeah. Okay. So can you tell our audience briefly, because I will probably show the video of our friend, which I've named Angry Cat, because I'm very, very bad at remembering all of the very cool names you all have gifted the animals. But he came from a different reserve. And so there was a situation where we actually did see the animal get very aggressive.
So let's give you a bit of background. His name is Ngobazan. He's a leopard that originates from a part of within this reserve called Mala Mala. And he was, whilst growing up, he was acclimated to vehicles without trackers. And having been pushed to move further north into properties that we are allowed to traverse on, we, as the northern section, are able to use trackers. And now this is something new to him. This is now a different design, a different vehicle, because now all of a sudden the outline of the vehicle that he was comfortable with never or doesn't look the same. So in the last 6 months that I've been here, he's actually calmed down quite a lot, to the point where I wouldn't say you could get within 6 foot or 2 meters from him and take nice pictures, but you could at least still see him, and he would be somewhat reserved and calm. But then it seemed like he got into a territorial dispute with another leopard. We are assuming it is tortoise pan, due to the fact that we had seen tortoise pan 2 days earlier with corresponding injuries around the eye, the left front or the left right paw, where it seemed like he had missed the dew claw, or he's missing his dew claw. But he was not as injured as what Ngobazan was. Now, having gone back on pictures and information around, we had seen where our flaw was. Our flaw was that this was a tense animal, not aggressive, but tense animal, and we should have kept it fairly slow, and we didn't. So he was displaying his intentions to us through the movement of his tail, the lowering of his head, that he was not happy. Had we allowed one vehicle out of the two to go out, and the approaching vehicle just to give it a couple of minutes, maybe he would have calmed down, but he just saw more movement, and again, that unfamiliar thing of a tracker in front of the vehicle, and that's where he got nervous. So he approached that vehicle and showed his unimpressedness or intention that he doesn't want to be seen by growling at that vehicle, going, I wouldn't say charging because of his injured leg, but he was definitely making his presence known that he doesn't want to be followed. Only go so far. Guys, heads down.
Holy smokes.
Why does it leave you guys and come to us?
You guys are tastier.
And these are things that all people, no matter if you are 40 years in the industry or whether 2 years in the industry, everybody needs to go through these types and these situations in order to not only develop their understanding in animal behavior, but just their understanding in general of how to control guests, how to control vehicle, how to control tracker, as well as the animal, and what intentions you want all out of that. And by doing all of that, we will get there eventually, and he will eventually calm down to a point where we can veer him within 6 feet. But we'll always respect the animals that when they are in a fight, let's just give them a bit more space than usual and enjoy their sight.
Yeah, I was actually a little bit like, oh, wow, because I got definitely within, I think, the 6 feet because we were right alongside it. And then he came up close and you kind of told it to go away and then you drove away. But then the tracker, of course, had their interaction. Have you spoken to the tracker? In that situation, I would imagine even though you're experienced, there's still fear, right? Do you know if he was afraid?
I'm very sure that he would have been somewhat afraid, but also aware of the type of leopard and its general behavior. Have I spoken to that specific individual? No. It is in a different, or he is part of a different lodge.
Right.
However, knowing the driver, he controlled the situation actually fairly well.
Yeah.
Allowing the animal to get that aggression out without trying to do any physical harm to anyone.
Right, because basically you told me too, there's kind of a protocol before, because the main thing is to not engage with the animal at all cost, except for if, I guess, you're literally getting rushed or something. So what can you kind of take me through what the steps are that you all learn in order to try to get the animal to back away in a case like this?
So in the situation like this, you definitely want to try and pull the attention of that animal away from the tracker because he is definitely exposed, being in front of that vehicle. So you try and bring it to the vehicle on your side, where you can try and control the outcome that way. And that's exactly what happened. The leopard walked in front and then around to the driver's side of the vehicle before moving off. So in the situation, the leopard approached. There was, hey, you start trying to break the idealism by trying to just speak fairly loudly to the animal. And when that doesn't work, you try and bang the door. And if that doesn't work, you try and rev the engine while moving away. And these are things that we all try and do in steps in order to not antagonize a charge. Remember, when the animal sees the car moving, eventually it can turn bad to the point where the animal is going to think, I have now won this battle. It is now retreating. Let me proceed to continue this dominance. So definitely trying to move back, we try and use that as a last resort. In the case of our incident, the animal was on the right-hand side of the termite mound. We saw a gap that we could fit the car on the left-hand side. We were unaware at that very moment that the left-hand side of the animal's eye is where the injury occurred. So having gone that side,
His blind side.
it is his vulnerable side, which meant that he came around the termite mound in order to prevent us from coming any closer. And even though the tracker was saying drive, 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 he was not the aim of the charge. He had protection from the trees, which was what was needed. He needed to be behind the trees so that the leopard does not see that individual. He can see the front of the vehicle or the side of the vehicle, and we deal with the situation as is. Now, once we had stopped and the leopard saw that we weren't a threat, it had calmed down, and from there we could drive on. Mm-hmm. If we had simply drove away, the leopard would have been antagonized and said, I have won this battle. Now I can continue to press my dominance and chase the vehicle onwards. Oh. So there's definitely a way of trying to break the animal's concentration of that behavior, and we try and do everything before leaving the area. Having said that, after everything has went down and the animal had shown his final intent, we all decided to rather leave the animal alone. A general warning was given out to all the rangers on the radio, stipulating that, if you do see him, rather approach him fairly cautiously. If you can avoid him, rather do.
Yeah, and I noticed that there's a lot of communication happening throughout the tours, and whenever you're going out on safari, like it's clear, like everybody's in communication with one another, not just for safety, but also so that I guess you know where the animals are. And can you briefly tell us like exactly what a tracker does and then what the field guides do?
So the trackers are there so that they can help find tracks of set animals, as well as find the animals themselves. So if they do find tracks and, for instance, they are happy to climb off the vehicle and walk, then that's what they'll do. They'll go find the animals on foot. They are aware fully of the risks and what it entails, potentially being chased or potentially being charged at. They are fully aware of that. And they do it simply to show the guests the best sightings that they can. The guide is there to ensure that the guests are safe, the tracker is safe, and obviously the vehicle is moving around, as well as the information. The tracker can throw out information regarding tracks or drag marks, anything that he feels comfortable with, and then the guide is there to either add on information or actually start the conversation by having the guest ask questions and giving relevant information.
And so I'm always interested in, best and worst guess. No, I'm just kidding. But I am also really interested in the fact that, one, it's like I always have this fear of, hey, I'm a tourist coming into this space. Am I respectful? Is this the right thing for the animals? Is this the right thing to be doing? Like, clearly this is conservation work as well. And so you see it as a positive that people come and that we do these tours, and you think this is a positive thing for, I guess, not the cause, but, for nature and for us to be, I guess, observers.
So in this case, so I would say yes, it's a positive because we are controlling the environment in the sense where we are protecting these animals. If we were not here, human encroachment would have happened and these animals would have been killed or chased into Kruger and therefore killed regardless.
Right.
So by giving educational tours and photographic tours in order to help people just see these animals, it gives them a better understanding and also a deeper connection to nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's certainly how we've felt, because I always have this apprehension. I go on a lot of trips. I'm very fortunate to see the world, and I'm like, am I part of the problem, or am I helping the solution? Am I contributing? Because of course, tourism is important for the countries as well to kind of bring in, that economic stimulation. But at the same time, it's been just, I don't know how to explain to people other than if you're standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon, you can explain to people how grand it is. Until you're standing there, you don't know. And I think until you actually are at a safari, seeing the lions, seeing the leopards, seeing the elephants up close, you really can't grasp how stunning it is and how grandiose it is. And you've seen these animals year after year. We spoke earlier and on these tours, and you're like, yeah, when I go on break, I come back and I don't know what the animal gossip is. Like, where's, Nene at? What animal's given birth and everything. So for you, do you have kind of a wow factor every time you go out, or is it like, oh, here's the leopards feeding on a impala again? Does it get not old, but do you feel like it becomes kind of cyclical, or do you feel like every time you go out you see something you've never seen?
So the thing is that as repetitive as it gets, obviously you're seeing potentially one of the same 20 leopards that you've been seeing for the last 6 months. It doesn't get old because eventually, if you look at it from this side of the world, where we can read 10 books on animal behavior, and as we are sitting at this fire, we might as well just throw it into the fire because, one, the books might not be based in the relevant area that you are operating in. So then obviously the information just works as a foundation to build your own knowledge. Mm-hmm. And two, and I think obviously this is the biggest one, is animals don't read set books. So
they don't?
So if the animals aren't reading the books, you basically working on the presumption of your experience with this animal, in the sense where you should be able to not only foresee and predict, but also understand what this animal is going to do. And for example, yesterday we saw a female leopard walking through the lodge, and then she proceeded to eat a toxic tree called a tambuti. And that toxin to humans would give us medical grade diarrhea. So we would actually go to hospital. Oh. And yet here is a leopard eating this said tree. Now, obviously, we know other animals like giraffes and black rhinos and nyalas and kudus can eat it. However, they eat it at a specific time of year. They don't necessarily eat it year-round. So here's something that we've never seen before, is a leopard eating tambuti leaves. However, if you work back on the principle, okay, if there's no latex in the leaves, it works as a good fibrous diet. Some animals, like your elephants, will eat it whilst it's got a minute amount of latex, and that will still help alleviate stomach issues. So it could be that because she had recently eaten the remains of an impala. So it's not hard to work out reasonings behind what she was consuming the leaves for, but it is still something yet new. So, like I said, these animals don't read the books that we do. So hence, as much as we want to say that we know what the animals are doing, it's simply through experience. So when guests normally ask, so what is this animal going to do? Well, just take a few minutes and watch. It's generally my suggestion, because by doing that, you get the understanding of, okay, now this animal's doing something I might know, but yet the guide is saying, watch. And the best way of learning is asking the questions who, what, why, how, and when. Why is this animal doing it? How is it doing it? When will it do it? These are questions that will give you a better understanding of animal behavior to a point where not even the books will give you the answers.
Yeah, it's really been fascinating. I have learned so much more, I think, in the last few days than all of my science classes put together on any animal kingdom. And it's been absolutely incredible. And I feel like we should pick up the conversation again in the near future, if you're willing, where I can really be prepared and just have you share all the very cool facts about the animals. Do you have a particular animal, maybe even in this park that or reserve, that you feel like an affection for? Is there a certain animal that you go, I'm a panda guy, or I'm a leopard guy, or I'm a lion guy? Like, is there an animal that you really enjoy studying, and for what reason?
So my favorite animal is a pangolin.
Ooh, the pangolin, which one of our fellow guests mentioned that they always tease their guides, and he'd been on 8 safaris, and they're like, show me a pangolin, because it's very elusive, yeah?
It is indeed highly elusive. Unfortunately, it is the most poached animal in the world.
Why?
For scales and meat, a traditional belief that it could work out as a medicinal use. Some people will say it will fight cancer. Other people will say that it just gives them a better life expectancy. So people will have medical and traditional beliefs about said animals that there is no scientific proof to. Why is this animal my favorite? Well, because of how elusive it is. It's a goal that very few people can say they have achieved, and it's a goal to always keep you pushing forward. So I can tell you I've seen close on to 50 kills with wild dogs, cheetahs, lions, hyenas, leopards, but nothing gives me a thrill quite as seeing a pangolin out in the wild, simply because of how elusive they are. There's very little knowledge about them, in the sense where what is their preferred environment, temperature coming out, why do they come out during this time, are they scavengers, are they predators, seeing as they are ant eaters or termite eaters, how do they walk, why do they walk like that? I mean, it is one of those animals that are prehistorical in general, and to watch them walk is so fascinating because they actually walk like a T-Rex.
Wow. I admit I actually had never heard of a pangolin before this trip. And I fully admit, actually, that I know very, very, very little about animals. And most of my listeners know me really well, that I'm actually allergic to most nature. And the fact that I'm even out here on safari, they're going, what? You're doing what? But I absolutely have such a revere and respect for nature and for animals. And I do think that we can be better as humans. So I really do appreciate the work that you are doing, and everyone here actually at this Earth has been phenomenal. And what is it like to, final question for now, because I'm going to make sure you come back on Zoom with me one day. But for now, what I've really noticed is this shared passion and love for the animals and the respect of what you all do. And there's a slew of cultures, a slew of humans working together. And it's such a rare moment in time and space, especially in a world that's so divisive, where everybody is working towards one thing. And so what does it feel like to be on a team where all differences are always seem to be put aside, and you guys are speaking multiple languages to one another. Like, language isn't even a barrier, which is phenomenal to me, because my one superpower everyone knows I wish I had was to be a polyglot, and I fail because I barely speak one language correctly. But what is it like to be, a part of this team for you? And what is it, that brings you to get up every morning at 4:00 or whatever time it is that you have to get up? Because we have to be up at 5. So I don't know what time you have to be up, but what is it that drives you to continue to do what you do?
It's the passion of education, honestly, to give the guests such an experience where they want to replay that specific moment in time over and over is where it actually comes. It's that of, we are here, we are living in their environment, or we are living on their time, and it gives us such a better understanding. And for me to wake up at 4:30, 4:00 in the mornings to do this is honestly very easy, because there's a saying that if you do something that you love in terms of work, you never work a single day in your life. And that's what I feel. I feel that by doing this specific job, I'm on a holiday 24/7, 365, even though I work 42 days on and I'm off 14 days and I miss the 14 days, I miss quite a lot. It's the mere fact that I get to do this with a smile and know that I might not be working, but I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And by giving people a better understanding, gives them motivation to come back and also enjoy whatever little bit of conservation there is throughout the world. So even though there's a dividends in the world where people are living the hustle and bustle of life, there are quite a lot of people that do come around and, they take a day or two out of their life and be like, okay, now let's see what the rest of the society is going, because we might not be as old as certain species in this world, and they will be teaching us a lot more in the future. However, it's just a mere understanding that we shouldn't forget our roots.
That's perfect. And a good podcaster would stop here, but because I don't know if you're going to Zoom with me again, very quick, top do not on a safari. For our listeners who dare to go on a safari, please follow this top couple of rules, please. Be respectful.
So number one is, when you're in a vehicle, do not stand up, especially if it's an open vehicle. There are certain restrictions that we in an open vehicle will do, and that is definitely one of the major ones. We understand that in Tanzania and Kenya, where it's a full covered car and people are able to stand up, you're more than welcome to do that, but definitely not in an open vehicle. And second of all, don't run. I can assure you that there are creatures that run faster than Usain Bolt, and that includes an elephant. So don't run, because you'll never outrun them. However, if you're going to run, just make sure that you have either a pangolin or a tortoise to race against, because that's the only things that you will seem to beat in this bush.
Geoff, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I very much hope you come back so we can have a full conversation. And I actually really love the ambience here with our wonderful team working around us sitting by the fire. I wish our viewers could see it, but I will throw up some clips and videos, and hopefully you'll come back and talk to me soon.
No worries. I look forward to it.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/Sifu Mimi Chan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram or Facebook.